and division directors talking directly to your clubs, and you are hearing whatever their issues are. So if you have gotten some feedback from your clubs, I want to know, what are the concerns? What are the obstacles or the stumbling blocks that's keeping them from transitioning to pathways? And that will help me answer your questions as we go through this. I don't see anything yet, but feel free to shoot questions in the chat or comments in the chat. That lets me know how to gear this speech, because I want it to be as useful for you as possible. I don't see anything yet. So I would just go into my little presentation, and then you guys can pop questions in the chat along the way. And this is only meant to be a total of 30 minutes so that you all can go to lunch. So the last 10 to 15 minutes will be reserved for you anyway. So we are starting off with the Pathways experience. That is, once again, our only educational program at this time. If people want to do things out of the traditional manuals for fun, that's fine for them, but we do not put in educationals on the traditional path anymore. It is all pathways. And a lot of those speeches that they may be doing likely does fit into pathways anyway. So maybe it just takes guiding them and letting them know what's available. As I mentioned, this is called From Icebreaker to DTM. And this is a nice little overview that's put together by an incredible Toastmaster named Mark Snow, who has created all kinds of guides and templates and matrices. So this gives a one-sheet overview on everything that you need to do to become a DTM under Pathways. A part of that is completing 2 paths and your Distinguished Toastmaster project. I will speak on those bits, and then Jean will come in and talk about the club leadership, the district leadership, which you are all doing now, the club extension programs, and the club support programs. So starting with the paths, we now have 11 of them, and we've been told that more paths are forthcoming. Our 11th path was engaging humor. And all of those paths can be found in the assessment. So once somebody starts on pathways and they don't necessarily know what path to choose, they can take that little 5-minute assessment and go with one of the top 3 recommended, or they can just read the descriptions and choose the one that they feel fits them best. Within those 11 paths, each path moves in similar ways. We have 5 levels in each path, and then they've added a little something. The path completion you see at the end. That used to be housed in level 5. For some reason, they have broken that out. So now after you complete level 5, you do need to also go back in and do the reflect on your path project as a standalone, and then do the path completion for that. And then they have completed a complete path. So I kind of call it 5+ or level 6, quote unquote, because it really is now separate from level 5. So that is one change that they have made. So if you do get people saying, hey, I completed level 5 and it's still not saying that I'm done, it's still not saying I'm proficient, that's probably why. They probably need to go back in and look at their transcript, because it now has popped up an additional piece where they have to do reflect on your path as a standalone, complete that, and then it will show them as proficient. Another change that has been made, which I actually like, is that you don't have to do the levels in order anymore. Once you choose a path, all of the levels are open to you. So you can start a path today and complete a project from level 3. You can complete all of level 3. You can't put it in Club Central, but you can complete it within Pathways, and the Basecamp manager can go ahead and approve that. So you don't have to go from level 1 to level 5 anymore. You can do this in any order that you like. The levels are broken down, and we'll just go through them really quickly. So for that first level, that icebreaker, I know that people keep saying, I'm tired of doing icebreakers. I'm tired of doing icebreakers. And I embrace those projects, because really level 1 is an open playing field. You can speak on anything that you like. The first time you did an icebreaker, 4 to 6 minutes, did you cover your entire life story? Hopefully not. So you can always break up your life story into different bits and pieces. And I just continuously tell people focus on different things about yourself. There's a lot of things people want to know. How did you choose your career? How did you know your significant other was the one? Tell us about your childhood. Do you have any siblings? Stories from your children, your grandchildren, things that interest you. There's a lot of things that you can speak about, and it doesn't have to just be, I was born in Rochester, I'm this old, I'm a Buffalo Bills fan, I do this for a living. You can break up your life story in many different ways. We're in the middle of the 24 hours of Toastmasters right now, and Ken Richardson was there yesterday and he got a question on the telephone, and he gave us the history of the telephone in his household. And throughout that, we learned a lot of interesting facts. And he certainly could have taken that 2 minute speech and made it an icebreaker, just telling us on the advancements and how his family grew with technology. So there's a lot of ways that you can do an icebreaker speech. Same thing for evaluation and feedback and the researching and presenting. These can literally be on absolutely anything. And, again, I say this is an open playing field. Evaluation has no guidelines other than give a speech, be evaluated on it, and then give it again using that feedback. The researching doesn't have to be extensive. We're not asking you to go research E equals MC squared. Research something that's of interest to you. Research something that you already love to do, and maybe you don't know the history of it. Geocaching, gardening, recycling, it literally can be anything. So I think sometimes people see these projects or they see the word research and they get a little put off by it, and they really make it harder than it has to be, because literally you can speak on anything. So that's level one. Yes, it would be nice if they changed the programs a little bit so we didn't have to keep completing it, because it is the same for every path. And they have heard that feedback. And I truly believe they are working on that feedback, but it hasn't happened yet. So until then, just use that for your open speeches. Speak on anything. Moving on to level two, learning your style. This is also another one that's very similar throughout each path. You might get different styles that you have to learn. Right now, we have three: understanding your leadership, understanding your communication style, and understanding your sense of humor. And every now and then they do toss in something like time management or learning your management style. And then we also have introduction to Toastmasters mentoring. This is another one similar to the icebreaker, where I always try to tell people it doesn't have to be a speech on, I did this quiz and this was my result, and now I'm doing my second path and this is still my result. But understanding your communication style can be outlined in any way that you want. I did one where I really evaluated a communication breakdown that I experienced, because we communicate every day. But now that we have the tools, now that we have that assessment, you could say, well, my style is this, and I suspect that the other person's style might have been that, and maybe that is why we had the clash. So it's not just about understanding your style, but understanding how you fit into the framework of other people that you are interacting with. Same with the leadership style. You don't have to just do the assessment and say, this was my result, but tell us about a leadership win. Have you been mentoring someone at work and now they've gotten a promotion, or in your area directorship, is your area distinguished? You can use that as a guide and then tell us how that fits into the framework of your life. So you don't have to be bogged down by, this is the same project, my result is the same, and this is just where we are. Moving on to level three. Now, this one is probably my favorite level. For those that are clinging to the traditional path, for those that say, I missed the CC manual, this is essentially it right here. The CC manual are 10 foundational speeches that are teaching you tools to be a better speaker. And you'll see most of them fall in level three: inspire your audience, using visual aids, using descriptive language, connect with your audience. You have to do two to get past this level, but there's nothing that stops you from doing more. If you just like this path and want to do more speeches, that's fine. If you want to do something that takes you outside of the club environment, such as making connections through networking, I know a lot of people are job searching right now. You should be networking anyway. So network and finish that project, and then come just give a small speech about it. Delivering social speeches is something a lot of us finding ourselves doing right now. So again, if you have a social speech that you normally give or an organization that you normally work with, practice the speech in your Toastmasters club, and then you are polished when you give it on the real stage. So this is the CC manual, in my opinion, and this should be something that all the Toastmasters, whether they love the traditional path or they're already in the pathways, they should really recognize these speeches, because this is the foundation that people say that they love and repeat regularly. For level four, this is where it starts to get a little more extensive. But again, this is one of my favorites because regardless of where you are in your career, whether you are job hunting right now or you're building your own business, all of these can be used in the real world, and all you have to do is come back and give a speech about it. If you find yourself looking for another career, or if you find yourself launching your own business, then building a social media presence is crucial to you and something you should be doing anyway. So those projects really lend themselves to your real world growth and experience. Creating a podcast, which is a great way to reach a new audience, writing a blog, building a social media presence on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, whichever ones you choose. All of those are about building yourself and building your career. Things that you might already be doing in your job, managing online meetings. For those, especially in a corporate club, if you're managing online meetings anyway, use one of those meetings as the project filler. Grab one of your coworkers who is also a Toastmaster, have them evaluate you on it, and you fulfilled that project. Same with the Q&A session, which is often a part of executive board meetings. So these projects are really taking you into the real world. You're not really held or bound by them. It's not just within the Toastmasters program, but all of this has been designed to focus on your growth outside of the club. Because as we always say, you're not just here to be a good Toastmaster, you are here to thrive in the real world. That was Smedley's mission. Level five, it gets a little more involved, but the great thing about level five is that everybody doesn't have to do an HPL. It's not a requirement for every path. Some of them are, but most of them you can skirt around it. So if you love HPL, it's still here. If you want to give a keynote speech, you can do that instead. We're all leading in a volunteer organization right now, so you have that part down. And the other ones, you can mix and match and choose as you need to. Now, one thing that I do want to focus a little bit on is recognition, because that is what we love here in Toastmasters. And even though we're meeting on Zoom, it can still be done. You're not spending money right now on open houses. You're not spending money on venues or other things that you might have had to buy in the past. So if you have a little bit of reserve, you can buy packs of ribbons and send them out every time that somebody completes a level. Same thing with those certificates. Even though we're not in person to hand them to each other, you as the base camp manager or whoever the base camp managers are can still go in when someone completes a level and take a screenshot of that and highlight that during your club meeting. Toastmasters is still sending out hard copies when you complete a complete path, the certificate of proficiency. So if you know that somebody has recently completed a path, make sure that they let you know so that they can hold it up and show everybody. Sometimes it takes seeing other people succeed so that other people get motivated to do something. So don't forget that you still do have those items that you can acknowledge people's achievement. And lastly, I don't want to leave you without resources. So I'm going to point you to that tried and true navigator. Whether you are a seasoned Toastmaster or brand new, the navigator is a great place to start, especially when you consider that some people are still having an issue or haven't quite jumped into pathways yet. This takes place of that new member packet that we used to get. But in addition to having everything about the club officer roles, it definitely is a great starting point for pathways in and of itself. So if somebody still hasn't taken the assessment yet, they can find it right there. And I just put another resource in the chat. This is another great reference guide that is put on by Mark Snow. And this is, I believe, about 25, 30 pages. And within this, you find a matrix that goes through every path, and it tells you what's in the path, what you need to complete each level. It also gives you a great breakdown on pathways in and of itself. And I just love his items. You can find him all over YouTube, and I'll also type his name in the chat so that you can search him if you choose. You can find him all over YouTube. A lot of districts have used his items for their own educational pieces, and I just really lean on a lot of things that he does. He even created this, which that one sheet guide is so handy for all of us. And then the last part of it, the Distinguished Toastmaster Project, I actually love this. I've done this twice. And this is pretty much, again, no holds barred. You're not held to the same standards as an HPL. You don't have to create a team. You can if you choose to. But what you're doing is taking all of the skills and tools that you have learned all throughout your journey and putting it into a major project that you choose. So one of my projects was being someone's campaign manager. I had a team anyway, because no one can do that job alone, but you are using all the tools that you've learned, the social media presence, the communication style, the leadership style, and you're culminating your own project and saying, this is my Distinguished Toastmaster project. You do have to give 3 speeches on it along the way, but you're not held to any of those other HPL requirements. You can fine tune it any way that you want to. So that is my spiel on DTM, on the DTM part of, or the 2 paths to DTM. So you do have to complete 2 complete paths plus that Toastmaster DTM project. And then Jean is going to talk about the rest of it this afternoon. So does anyone have, what is the difference between an HPL and a DTM project? So your HPL, if you choose to do it, it is needed for level 5. And the HPL in Pathways is essentially the same as it was in the traditional. You do have to form a committee. Within that committee, you do have to meet 5 times. They have to sign off on each meeting and you completing the work. And you are giving a speech at the beginning and the end of the HPL. So the requirements are pretty static for the HPL. The HPL is required for, I believe, about 4 or 5 paths. So there are still about 6 paths that you can do that don't require it. But whether it's required or not, it's always an option. So there are people that love HPLs. You can always do it if that's the one you choose. The DTM project is a project that you craft yourself. You don't necessarily have to have a committee. You don't have anyone signing off on anything. You give a speech at the beginning telling your club what the DTM project is, and then you give a speech after the project is completed, but you are basically making your own guidelines for what that project is and how you're going to have it completed and what your definition of success is. So that would be the difference. The HPL does require that you have a committee, and that committee meets at least 5 times and they sign off on it for you. Yes, remember to claim your free path. And this is for all your club members as well. That this is a gift from TI for renewing this cycle. So between October and December, if someone renews for this cycle, they have until December 31st to claim a free path. And I would say do that sooner rather than later. Don't forget about it, because that's a $20 value right there. And if you're headed to your second path anyway, now you're on the road to DTM for free. HPL, yes, is the high performance leadership, and the DTM project is the Distinguished Toastmaster project. And any more questions? Anything that's been coming in from your clubs that have been a concern? Any issues that they've had getting people on pathways? Any questions from any of you? How could I? Well, if they don't know the new system, or if they don't know whether or not they like it, then the best way to do that is to try it, right? How can you really say that you don't like something that you have not tried? So maybe it takes in your club walking people through the assessment so that they see what it is. And it really is guiding you on what your strengths are, what your weaknesses may be, and what it is that you want to learn for this segment of time. And every time I do a new path, I do the assessment again because my skill set has changed. And I do get different results each time. So maybe in a club meeting, somebody wants to just put up the assessment and walk through it. Yes, people doing it on their own are going to answer the questions in their own way, but maybe they're afraid of the word assessment, and so they haven't even done that part yet. Maybe just seeing how easy the questions are and what it's really gathering and what it entails might help. um, but pathways is all we have. So I would outline those levels. I would go through and show them the projects that are in there and show them that there are different ranges and levels of projects. And so maybe they just haven't even looked at it at all. Again, if you really like the traditional path, all of those projects are still here. So if you're saying you don't like pathways, I suspect that they haven't even quite looked at it yet. So really take them through path by path and show them what's available. Oh, that's a good point. Um, for the area directors especially, do you feel comfortable working with your clubs on pathways? If you get pathways questions, do you feel comfortable guiding them? Is that is that a barrier for anyone? If you're not, I do believe that we have Monday evening. Kristen, are we still doing that? Monday evenings, the pathways, I don't know what they're actually called. The
Yeah,
pathways,
Pathway
pathways office
Labs.
hours.
pathway labs. Are we still doing those
Yeah,
every Monday?
right now we are, but like the last 4 weeks in a row, he's had nobody come to office hours. So if we continue to not have anybody participating, then we'll probably make it appointment only so that he's not sitting there for an hour waiting for people.
Okay. And maybe it could be that if Monday night doesn't work for you, maybe you could work with the trio to find a time that does work for you if you as area and division directors feel that you might need a little more guidance, because you really are going to be the bridge between your club and the district. So you as area directors should feel well armed and ready to answer any pathways questions that they have, whether it's just pathways in and of itself or base camp managers. But we really do need to connect and figure out why we have clubs that have a 30% adoption rate that is really low. And as I mentioned in the beginning, this is the only educational system that we have. So if we have 70% of a club that hasn't started pathways yet, what are they doing? Because if they're not moving through a program, at some point they may just say, why am I here? So we want to really reach out and see what we can do to get them transitioned to pathways and get them started. And sometimes it just takes a little more education and sitting down with them, similar to this presentation, and showing what's in the paths, what projects they can do, how they can do it, give them a blueprint to really start moving through the path and show them that it's not that difficult, but people have been making it difficult on themselves. Um, yeah, so we do have someone saying that Monday evenings are during the work hours for them. So maybe a daytime hour or maybe reaching out um, to find a time that works for both parties so that we can have Pathways Labs when more people can attend, possibly a weekend day. You can reach out to me, you can reach out to the trio, and if there's any area or division out there, division director out there that's having any issues with pathways or wants a little more understanding, we are all here for you because we want you to go out and help your clubs thrive. So please know that you can come to any of us and we would be happy to work with you or your clubs to help transition people to pathways. I don't see anything else in the chat. So at this time, I'm going to thank you once again for having me. It's been a pleasure seeing all your beautiful faces, waking up with you early this morning, and we are here for you to help you thrive. So please let me or the trio know if there's anything we can do for you. With that, back to you, Carol.
Thank you, Nadia. How